and then they chant really nice things to you. And then I remember losing, which was the worst part of it. So it was, I've said it not just because I'm here. I think it's the best atmosphere in college football. I think it's the toughest. The fans are the rowdiest. It's freaking awesome.
So to be back now, commentating in this environment, what's that like?
Well, I mean, it shows you're old. But no, it's always fun to go to different venues, and it's fun to go outside the SEC too, where you didn't play, and see how they stack up. And it'll be interesting tomorrow night. I think the fans need to play a big part, and they need something to happen early to get them involved. They can't bring food though, like Les was talking about. Food stay a while, but you can buy some food and stay a while if you want.
Break down a little bit of LSU and Ole Miss and what you see. Some of the intriguing things.
I think you have to caution yourself, and I've learned this through doing it. Like, I think your natural inclination is Ole Miss is better. Just you say Ole Miss is going to win the game, but styles make fights, and different styles for different days matter. And the weakness for LSU, for me, and what I've been saying is their defensive front seven is not as talented as it used to be. Well, Ole Miss's front is not the greatest either. Their offensive line, I think, is their weakness of their team. So you kind of have weakness on weakness and strength on strength, because their wide receiving core is really good with Treadwell, but LSU's still got some DBs. Don't get twisted. I mean, they can still cover. So I think that's the matchup on defense, the strength versus strength in the secondary, weakness versus weakness up front. And then I think when LSU has the ball, I vividly remember the last drive and just watching Bama versus Ole Miss. They ran the ball almost every single play, had some success, ran it left almost every single play, drive down, score, touchdown. And I think LSU's offensive line is better than Bama's. And so I think, can they make holes? Ole Miss is a little bit smaller on the defensive line, but they're hyperactive as can be. They're tough. I mean, they fly around. They play really hard. So I think the passing game, can they give anything for LSU? Can you get some kind of balance, some kind of big plays? So I think that will be the key to the offense.
If you don't say a flattering thing about a fan base or a team, does the fan base immediately think he doesn't like our team?
Yes, absolutely. It's really what makes our job fun, though. Because you can look at that however you want. The way I look at it is, if I pick against your team and it upsets you so much that you want to take to Twitter and berate me, it's a form of respect. Think about it. I mean, they respect your opinion enough to go look you up, or if they're following you, and to just go hammer you. I love it. I love it. That's the most fun part of our job, is the fans that cheer you and then the fans that boo you. And I love being able to shut them up too, because that's fun. Because just like last week, I don't know why, but just like I'm the only one who picked Notre Dame. I thought, just watching tape over and over and over, I'm like, you know what? I think FSU's a little bit better, but I think Notre Dame can win. And you're wrong. But you know what? You gave it a swing, but that's what makes our job fun, is the fans make it great because they're passionate. That's why we have a job. We're only sitting up here because they love to hear about football and they want to know more information. So it's just really cool to be able to do that.
What's it like talking about Georgia? Good, bad? Do you hear from their fans?
Well, oh God, yeah. Oh, I'm Benedict Arnold. I'm a traitor. I'm a turncoat. So I get it. I get it worse probably from them than any fan base. And it's funny because when I pick Georgia, I'm a homer, and when I pick against them, I'm a traitor. So my philosophy is I want to be right. That's my choice. Is I want to give you an honest opinion. I'm never going to be a guy that stands up there and is like, Georgia's going to win. Like, if I don't think they're going to win, then I tell you I don't think they're going to win. And so I get it. I get blasted back home. But again, it's fun. It's not something that you necessarily changes the way you think or anything. You just call it like you see it, and I think people in the end will respect it.
You mentioned it's surprising, I guess, to see LSU without a very potent D-line this year.
Yep.
There's been so much talk. Obviously, you've seen film. A lot of these guys are redshirt freshmen and talented but young.
Yep.
From a defensive line perspective, does it just take time for guys to click, or what is it?
Well, when you have the exodus like you guys have had of underclassmen, you're losing those depth every single year, and now you force guys in there to play probably a little bit sooner than you'd like. But I think that's part of it, part of growing pains. But just those guys have to mature. They have to get in the weight room. They have to get bigger, get stronger. And y'all had a run that was just silly. I mean, you think about those teams back in 2012 with all those freaks you guys had. I mean, it was amazing. And Kiki and Montgomery, those guys played from when they were freshmen and sophomore on. Like for 3 years before they left early until you got to see them. And so I just think that the run at defensive tackle you guys have had, you can't always do that. I mean, I think there's got to be some point when you do have a little bit of growing pain, and they are, and they're getting better. I mean, I can honestly say that. You watch them, they're getting better. And the freshman defensive tackle is getting better. I mean, I think that as you go along in the season, that's the hard that some people just get so pigeonholed with this team is this, but teams change. Teams definitely get better or sometimes get worse throughout the season by an injury or something else, and you just got to continue to watch and see how they grow and adapt.
With that being said, what have you thought about how the SEC West has been this year and how you see it kind of unfolding going forward? There's still a lot of games to play.
A lot of games to play. I think the two Mississippi teams are the best teams in the West. And I think Ole Miss's defense looks like LSU used to look. I mean, those guys are fast. They're freakish. I mean, they're physical. They play with an edge. I think Mississippi State has the best defensive front seven in the league. I think Ole Miss might have the best defense because the back of their defense is really solid. So I think it's going to be about matching up with different teams. I think, like Mississippi State, they're a really physical team. They don't want to play, or they're not going to be great dropping back a pass every time. That's not going to be their game. They need to run the football and have balance. Bama's got a really physical defensive line. You think they could take some of that balance away and make them pass? So it's going to be stylistically how these teams match up down the stretch. But I mean, it's silly the amount of good teams in the West. I'm not getting that twisted. The SEC is the SEC West. You can throw Georgia in there, from the SEC East, but we're talking about the dominant. Yeah, the Homer. The dominance from the SEC. It comes from the West. It doesn't come from the East. There's a lot of bad football being played in the SEC East.
You talked about stirring up fan bases and saying what's on your mind. The addition of Feinbaum to the show.
No, last year.
Little man that throws big grenades, right?
Yeah.
When he talks. Can you talk about what it's like to work with him and when he makes his comments?
Well, he worked all last year with us, and now he's doing SEC Nation. But we'll still have him on some of the segments. Just we'll zap him in. It is what it is, man. I mean, he's an interesting dude. I mean, I worked with him last year at SEC Media Days, and we definitely don't see things eye to eye a lot of times. And I'm pretty abrasive when it comes to that a lot of times, and so I would disagree and tell him I disagreed. But he'll voice his opinion, and he'll tell you what he thinks. And I think he enjoys wearing the black hat. I think he relishes it. I think he looks for opportunities to wear it, and that's his thing.
If he's interesting, then what are the callers to this show?
I'll leave that one alone.
Ole Miss is kind of in unfamiliar territory, being a favorite in Death Valley.
Yeah.
How do you think they handle these, heightened expectations? Being the team that's expected to win.
I think it's interesting because when you get talked about and you start getting bragged about, you see things sometimes change with teams and they lose that hunger and they lose that edge. But there's one thing that's always different. There's one thing for me that always holds true. Home, road, no matter where you play, neutral site, defense always travels. Defense, it doesn't require the same amount of timing. It doesn't require the same amount of mental sharpness. We're not bright on D, dude. I mean, you fly around, you hit people. See ball, get ball. And that's why I think even if Bo Wallace struggles in games, that defense is so good. It's one of the best in the country that they're still going to stay around. And I think he's figured that out these last however many games. The first 4 games, he has 6 picks. Last however many, I think 5 games, he's got 0, and 0 in SEC play. And so I think, that's very important to their success, is not turning over, not beating yourself, but defense always travels.
Right. Now, at the same time, LSU, they're, not used to being underdogs. Now, do you think they come out and play with their eyes wide open, or do you think they kind of have the chip on their shoulder and kind of prove that, they're going to be right back on top in the near future?
I'm not a big chip on their shoulder kind of guy. I mean, you're either good or you're not. I mean, you can have a chip on your shoulder and it can get you some serious adrenaline for 2 plays. Bottom line is, if you suck, you suck. If you're good, you're good. And I mean, there is something to keeping that edge when you're not talked about. That's why I think Nick Saban and Alabama are the happiest people in the country right now, because everybody's kind of kicking them and barely beat Arkansas. You guys suck. And last week you saw him just stomp a mud hole in A&M.
Right.
So I think that there is something to keeping people focused and motivated, but I mean, LSU's not going to win this game tomorrow because they're the underdog. They're going to win this game tomorrow if they play great in certain areas and if they out-execute Ole Miss.
Bo Wallace has had a nice streak of clean football, no turnovers. I guess it's a case of people wondering, is he due or is he going to continue this? And this is their first really rough road environment this year. And could that play a factor in him turning over the ball?
One thing it's going to, like, listen, I was on the Bo Wallace, which Bo's going to show up. Bo knows Bo. Who knows Bo? But just because he has one bad game, I don't think it's fair to classify him as, oh my God, he went back to bad Bo. He's put together several games in a row that he deserves respect. You know what I'm saying? Like,